We're here to bring a new type of new show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Thursday, September 11th here in Seoul. I'm Lee Soo-jin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Jessica.
Happy Thursday, everyone!
Happy Thursday to you too. And also Key's with us.
One more day, it's Friday.
One more day. And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So it's Thursday, which means we're going to begin with our keyword news, where we look at a story that has been gaining traction over the past 24 hours. And today's keyword is matcha. The matcha craze is expanding beyond food and beverages into beauty, fashion, and lifestyle products. According to the online fashion platform Mushinsa on Wednesday, searches for matcha in July and August soared by more than 1,000% compared to the same period last year. The matcha trend could be seen in everyday items like hand creams and perfumes, while convenience stores, cafes, and restaurants are also embracing matcha-inspired offerings to meet growing consumer demand. So, Jessica, are you a fan of matcha? If so, what kinds of matcha products do you usually enjoy? There's so many of them. There's drinks, desserts, and obviously hand creams as well.
I am definitely one of the consumers that have contributed to the 1,000% growth in the sales. I love everything matcha. I mean, we saw the drinks, desserts. Like if I see anything that has matcha on it, I am one of those consumers that would be very willing to open my wallet and then get them. Like there was a matchabeauty that came out, you know, those long pokey sticks, and I was like, oh my god, I really need to have it because I was afraid they were going to get sold out. But matcha craze in Korea is very real. I see drinks, even like cosmetics that are coming out everywhere, and I'm definitely one of the ones who would like to jump on that boat. Yeah.
With those matcha treats, I think a good tip is to like freeze them, put them in the refrigerator, and then eat them. Yeah. That's my favorite.
Oh, I love that. Oh my god, I'm salivating.
What about you, Key?
I used to be a fan of green tea actually, so I used a lot of green tea face masks, and it was good for swollen faces, like how my face is. You can obviously, I didn't wear that green tea mask today. I drank a lot of tea while I was in Japan, while I was in college. There were all different stores, and I loved matcha ice cream. That used to be my favorite.
Really
but at a certain point, I just got tired of it, I think, so I don't specifically look for any matcha products anymore, but they're still good.
I was actually going to say that you look really good, which is why that could be a good tip for anyone who's watching.
Yes.
If you want to look like Key, try this matcha.
Exactly, mask pack.
From lattes to lotions, matcha is proving that a simple flavor can inspire creativity across industries. Whether for taste, wellness, or style, it seems matcha is much more than the flavor of the week. And that concludes our keyword news for this Thursday. And as we make our way towards the end of the work week, we're taking a closer look at what goes on behind the scenes in our daily interactions at work and how small word choices and questions can make a big difference. So let's take a look at the screen to learn more. It's never easy having a conversation with your boss. While there are countless memes poking fun at the generation gap between Gen Z employees and their managers, some hilarious, others painfully relatable, these differences can sometimes create real stress at work. At the heart of it, the challenges often come down to communication styles, expectations, and workplace culture. Today on News Generation, we're exploring the questions bosses ask and how to handle them without stress or conflict. So as we just saw in the video, starting conversation at work with people who are not only much older but also in a higher position than you can sometimes be quite tricky. It's not just about breaking the ice, it's about navigating differences in experience and communication styles, all while making a good impression. So Ki, not to put you on the spot, but you've been with Arirang for a while. So
He's on the spot.
I am on the spot.
You are on the spot.
Yes.
So I'm sure you've met a lot of new hires. So while I'm sure you always make them feel welcome, I have no doubt about that. But what kind of questions do you typically ask them to get to know them?
So, in a couple of weeks, it's going to be my 20th anniversary.
Wow.
Sitting down this very building.
You're ancient.
Yes, I
You're
am
living
from
history.
dinosaur era. So I don't normally initiate the conversation unless they reach me. Not because I'm shy or about anything. It's just that I don't want to be 꼰대 around here. And if anything, they would ask me some questions like, I do in the future, or for example, like how do you stay so long to be a dinosaur, so anything like that. And then I would ask them, what I normally would ask them is, how are you doing? Is there anything that makes you uncomfortable, or how's the show? It's probably about that. If I get closer, then I would say, how's your weekend? What did you have last night? And if I'm even closer than that, then I would go on social media and they see these posts and it's like, oh, how's that concert, for example, or how's your trip? That's probably about it, but nothing too serious. I try to avoid any work-related questions because I know it's going to be a bit burdensome to them. So yeah, that's probably about it.
So for you, you only ask personal questions if you feel close to them then?
Personal but general question. I wouldn't ask you about your family or anything. It's just that about maybe food or how's your health, probably. That's about it.
I guess it's an honor to get personal questions from you. So
yeah,
I look forward to that.
So what did you have last night?
So awkward conversations between bosses and Gen Z employees are more common than you might think. In fact, a recent survey asked Gen Z workers which questions they most wanted to avoid when talking to their managers. So Cheska, can you share what those questions were and why they might make people feel a bit uncomfortable?
Yes, absolutely. And even though I do make fun of Key a lot, it is really because he is a good senior. And if everyone made us feel that much comfortable, I don't think we would have this kind of issue. But some bosses do ask a couple questions that do make us a little bit uncomfortable. So I'm going to open it up to generally to the people here. What is one question that you would actively like to avoid at a family dinner table? Like, what are some of the topics? Just give it to me.
I think for me, it would be marriage, because I feel like a judgment is coming.
Yep.
I get kind of anxious. Before,
you tense up, right? What about you?
Well, I've graduated because I am married, I have a son, so now it comes down to politics.
Ooh, that's another
And then we
topic.
fight.
Yeah, it's a very heavy topic.
Fight intense.
Right, it can actually make the conversation very divisive. All the answers are actually here, so let's take a look at the screen. So we had politics and marriage. Now, according to a survey done by employment platform that asked Gen Z job seekers, quote, what are the questions from your boss or seniors that would make you uncomfortable? A large number of them, as Key said, politics, as it usually leads to a very heated and divisive argument. And then next one is dating life, as Susan said, marriage, which is also very personal and private. And lastly, hobbies. But I think this is more in terms of like, what do you do on your free time and trying to get to know you, trying to ask about their time outside of work. So there were others which were religion, talking about appearance, where you live, etc. Again, they're all very personal and private issues, but I also think, if I may add my 2 cents, I don't think it's just about those topics. It's also about how you phrase them. You can still talk a lot about hobbies like food, as Key said, or leisure, pleasantly enough, but I think you have to do it with respectful boundaries. And sometimes people aren't well versed in phrasing a question in a certain way that makes them more comfortable than the actual question itself.
Right, I agree. Phrasing, the way you say it is so important. So there are a lot of factors that can lead to misunderstandings at work, everything from communication styles to expectations. But Key, wouldn't you say one of the biggest reasons that there's a difference is that because of difference in values between the generations?
Yeah, and their backgrounds as well. So these days, Gen Zs really put their strong emphasis on privacy, far more than past generations ever did. They value their personal space and their own time. In contrast, Korean society used to have a lot of, for example, a collectivist streak, sometimes even too much, and that created its own side effects. So I guess it's just time of changing nowadays. We normally spend more time with your colleagues if you're a regular worker at the office, because you spend about 8 or 9 hours a day, then your family. And when you have lunch together, or maybe sometimes occasional dinner together, you normally tend to share quite a bit of stories. Right. Sometimes it could be quite personal, and it's only natural when your boss or your superior asks those things. But then nowadays it seems as though they are crossing some line among young generations, which I would agree, because sometimes it doesn't look like they're asking because they care about you. It's more of they want to find about something that could be gossipy. For example, if it's about politics, you can ask, okay, did you vote yesterday?
Right.
That's just asking action,
That's
right?
pretty
Or what did you guys,
casual,
that's casual. But then, who did you vote is a completely different story.
And why did you vote that
Exactly.
person?
Yeah.
And then do you really believe in, and then it gets into the
Fall
whole...
this rabbit hole. So what other differences do you see in the kinds of topics that older and younger generations tend to talk about, Jessica?
I think I have a mini confession to make, which will make this anecdote and this story a little bit more relatable. I I love my grandmother, but if she brings up any topic about dating or marriage, I get very tensed up. And I think this is because in her time, marriage, dating, and having a children was a very common topic. Like he said, it's all about experiences. But nowadays, I think our generation feel unwanted pressure, and even sometimes it is a bit private, so we have to stand our ground. Otherwise, it would keep piling up. And I think it's very, very difficult balance because while we try to understand their generation, you only know what you know, right? So I think it is very tricky to understand how much can we allow it and how much do we have to do to sort of protect our boundaries as well.
Right, I agree. So it's only natural that the values and even the everyday interests of Gen Z differ from those of older generations. That part is understandable and even kind of expected. But sometimes it's not just about what we talk about, it's how we communicate, as Jessica said, and which creates conflict. So Ki, could you share some of the communication styles or behaviors that tend to cause tensions between generations?
Yeah, so there was this case a few years back. An entry-level employee has actually answered their boss with just yeah, without the consonant encourage, just like that on the screen. It's not a typo.
Yeah, I would have thought it was a typo.
Yeah, so it's a short version of yes. So imagine texting your boss like that. Instead of saying yes, the full answer, but just say why. That's for Gen Z, it was a no big deal back then. They thought, hey, as long as you understand me, that's fine. It feels even friendlier. But then older generations saw it a different way. They thought it was sloppy, even disrespectful. To them, it looked like the younger generations, young folks, are skipping their basic manners you're supposed to show at work. So just like that yeah incident ended up sparking a whole debate about language, respect, and the generational gaps.
I think the difference in lingo also makes a huge, causes a lot of miscommunications. So are there any other communication styles that you know?
Yeah, other than what seemed like a typo. So I thought, do you remember rolling the eyes with a sigh?
That's a big one. I do. I'm guilty of that sometimes.
Yeah, I thought that was the thing. So now Gen Z came up with something completely new, and it's called, quote, Jen-Z-stare. I've never done it, but it's apparently global on social media, and it's basically either a soulless or blank stare straight into the person who asked a question that Gen Z find very uncomfortable or unwilling to answer. And of course, it can make people feel a certain way. And I will demonstrate with Ki, my older boss. Please ask me a question that would summon my Gen Z stare. Go.
So it's Thursday. It's about to get weekends. Tomorrow is Friday. Do you have any plan for your weekend? Weekend?
I think the silence part is the most
Done.
intense part.
Ooh, I felt like I had to hold my breath there. I don't even know how long I'm supposed to hold, but apparently this is how you do it, and I guess they hold it until they stop asking the question. But I think this is sort of a defense mechanism that Gen Z sort of put on, and of course some people find it very rude, but the Gen Z defense is, this is their way of shutting down or stopping a question, unpleasant question, without having to talk about it. That the jury is still out. Yeah.
I have to say, are you sure this is your first time? It's very natural.
She's very good, or it's because I was asking.
I was going to say, Ki definitely helped. Let me leave it at that.
So there's clearly a disconnect when it comes to how different generations communicate in the workplace, whether it's the words they choose, the tone they use, or even the way they respond in conversations. So what feels natural to one generation can sometimes come across as confusing, awkward, or even rude to one another. So to find out about what our viewers think, we asked on the Arirang News YouTube channel, which Gen Z communication style is hardest to understand. Here's what our viewers said. 18% of respondents pointed to no private conversations as a source of conflict, while 21% said that using abbreviations, even with older colleagues, was an issue. A much larger share, 59%, said that the most common problem was younger employees giving a blank stare, known as the Gen Z stare that Jessica just demonstrated, instead of a verbal response. Meanwhile, 2% mentioned other factors. The results were quite interesting. So to gain a more global perspective, we'll hear from a Gen Z in another country about how their generation communicates and what makes it unique. And that conversation will take right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us is Alanya, a Gen Z from South Africa who's currently living in Amsterdam. Hi Alanya, thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So as a Gen Z, do you think there's a Gen Z communication style? If so, how would you describe it?
I definitely think there is. Of course, on a normative basis, we all communicate through verbal or nonverbal means such as body language. But I think because Gen Z grew up with technology, there's a very visual aspect. So we tend to communicate through memes, short videos like TikToks or Reels, also emojis. Or I guess this is also visual, which was mentioned before, the blank stare. So the way we tend to talk to each other is through humorous pictures and visual aspects. So I think we put an emphasis on being funny, and a lot of the times that also creates misunderstandings within Gen Z because every algorithm is different. So if you are on another side of the internet, you might not know what other people are being exposed to. So when you talk in references, sometimes you don't know what your friend is actually talking about because you haven't seen a video yet, or you don't understand the joke. So I think Gen Z communication is almost like its own culture that you really need to dive into.
And I think context would be so important in that when you're using these visual text and cultural memes. So in your view, what's the biggest difference between how Gen Zs communicate and how the older generations communicate at workplaces?
I think there are three major areas. Firstly, how we have started to view formality, also how hierarchy has changed, and how English has influenced a lot of different countries. So first, I just want to say you can't generalize communication with work culture because it's very culturally dependent. Every country has different standards. Korea and South Africa are generally more formal and hierarchical countries, or you have more respect towards your elders, whereas many European countries are not as rigid when it comes to hierarchy. So everything is very contextual. But to elaborate on the different communication styles, I think the funniest thing is that Gen Z sees formality as a way of being rude. There are a lot of funny videos online where employees are sending hate emails to their superiors complaining. But then the complaint is really, really formal and well written, and you could not tell that this person is actually angry. So the superior or the receiving end sees this email as really polite and is really happy to receive such kind feedback, whereas the Gen Z thinks they're being really passive aggressive. So that is kind of funny, a funny communication difference. Then in terms of hierarchy, I feel like it's becoming less and less strict globally. So younger people start to address older generations on an equal ground and with a certain level of confidence that maybe the superiors see as disrespectful. It's almost like the dilemma at home when children reach a certain age and then they start talking to their parents a certain way, but the parents don't see that as acceptable behavior. So this is kind of the vibe I've gotten at some of my jobs before. And lastly, even though I grew up in an English-speaking country, not every country in the world has English as its national language, but because of globalization, a lot of young people are learning English. So the way their own language merges with English also affects the way they communicate. So in Korea, we have Konglish. In Germany, there's Denglish, which is German and English. And if you don't know English, you will probably have problems understanding what people are saying because English flows a lot into the daily vocabulary or slang, and that definitely also impacts the ability for communication and understanding. So I think overall you could just say the difference in communication is a difference in mentality, but also just global development.
So in short, what do you think an effective way to resolve these communication differences and or conflicts between those generations?
I think, again, it depends on the cultural context, but this is very cliche. I think the best thing you could do is transparency and open communication. I've had a lot of different jobs, and this year I did an internship, and what I really enjoyed was the trust and I don't know, humanness within the way that the superiors were treating the interns or younger employees. So we would have weekly meetings where we would discuss the projects and the progress, or if there were any issues and how to solve that as a team. Or there were also specifically once a month there was like a breakfast where everyone would bring food and you could just talk to your higher ups as normal people and not as your higher ups necessarily. Mm-hmm. So I think when you create a situation where everyone can come together on an equal ground, the conversation becomes a lot more productive regardless of what communication style you use. and what age you have, I think that really bridges the gap between Gen Z and other generations.
All right, thank you so much for sharing your insight with us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So it's clear from our discussion among us and also with the Gen Z from a different country, it's clear that the gap between generations isn't going to disappear overnight. Gen Zs bring fresh perspective, digital fluency, and new ways of connecting, while older generations contribute experience, wisdom, and long-term vision. And misunderstandings are bound to happen, but they don't have to define the workplace. So if both sides can approach each other with openness, patience, and a willingness to listen, those differences can actually become strengths rather than sources of conflict. After all, every generation ultimately wants the same thing: to be respected, understood, and of course, to get off on work on time. So this brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. But News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. A big thanks to Cheska.
Pleasure's always mine. Thank you.
And also Ki.
Thank you.
And to all our viewers, thank you so much for watching, and we hope you have the best day. We are News Generation.